Hey YouTube, Ryan here, and I've got an email from a buddy of mine in town who is currently in the middle of some pretty tragic injuries here. I'm just going to read the email to you and then I'll give you my thoughts on it, because I was writing it out to him, my answers to some of his questions, and it's going to get to a place where it's going to be valuable for you guys to see as well, I think, because at some point we all get injured. And how we respond to that injury and how we think about that injury can make or break not only our Frisbee careers, but also our athleticism. And I want to hopefully provide you guys with my perspective on this, which has put me in a position where I'm actually stronger at age 36 than I was at age 22, age 18, because of my injuries. And I'll get to why that is in a moment. First, I'll read the email. So, from Kieran. Hey Ryan, I tried posting on your website, but I'm not sure it went through. Long story short, I twisted my ankle recently playing Ultimate. It's not the first time, and I've been having a lot of issues with my general foot health and biomechanics for some years now. I had attempted barefoot shoes in the past, but due to being young and ignorant, I definitely overdid it and decided it wasn't for me. This recent injury, however, did make me reconsider that it might be beneficial to have my feet closer to the ground, as it would reduce the possible torque on my foot in a future rolling event and help widen my base. So, and my research seems to agree, and it eventually led me to your article on barefoot Frisbee playing. I'll link to that article below. One of the most compelling arguments I have for playing barefoot is that if this is the surface of the ground, a bare foot is flush to that ground and your toes get to splay out, so your base is quite sturdy. For me, I've got wide feet, so cleats pull my toes in, and I think for most people, cleats are designed to pull your feet in tight, your toes in tight, like as if you're about to kick a soccer ball, because when you kick a soccer ball, you want this compact, hard unit of cohesive toes. You don't want your toes to be spread out when you're about to kick a soccer ball. So with the design of cleats, they're sort of pointed like that, and they're obviously raised up on spikes. And when your base is sucked in and raised, the ability for that to roll is greater from spikes with narrower toes than with no spikes, toes wide. So that's just something to keep in mind. I'm not saying whether or not it's perfect for everybody. That's just my main reason for wanting to play barefoot as much as possible and walk around in life as much as possible barefoot, train barefoot as much as possible. So back to the email. My research seems to agree, and it eventually led to your article on playing barefoot Frisbee. Now the funny thing is, when I saw the article, I immediately thought of you. I played against you a few times in the Peterborough Rec League, and then reading the article, the first picture is you guarding an old teammate of mine. Small world, so that's pretty funny that he's from Peterborough and kind of found this article through my Frisbee stuff online. I remember thinking of all the things you described when I first saw you walk onto the field opposite me barefoot. You still ran circles around me, even with a couple slide outs due to lack of traction, especially if it's raining or on natural grass, not so much a problem on turf. And definitely, I gave you a little more space than I would have otherwise, even after you told me not to. Haha. So people often see me play barefoot and they give me more space, even though I'm saying if I get stepped on, it's on me. Take that as you will. I think I would definitely go the barefoot route, except I'm hoping to improve my Frisbee skills and become more competitive. Pre-COVID, I was playing with the Calgary-based mixed team Lit, and I was asked to go to nationals, although I would have been an alternate most likely. It was, however, an incredible experience, and I'm keen to pursue again. In my research, I did my best to try and find some barefoot-style cleats or cleats with a larger toe box that would still accommodate my average width feet. As I'm sure you know, I was unsuccessful. No cleats are designed this way. And thus I'm thinking I might opt to pick up some turf cleats as a compromise. Turf cleats would reduce the heights and firmness of the cleats, hopefully aiding in some rolling prevention. What are your thoughts on this? I already endeavor to spend as much time as possible playing barefoot, and after reading your article, I will definitely be opting to spend as much time training barefoot as possible. So I don't really have much of an opinion on turf cleats other than what you stated in your email there, Kieran. So if you're finding that the make and manufacturer, the models of these turf cleats allow for a wider turf box and sort of more modest cleat heights, the actual spikes, then those are both wins if you're really needing to wear those cleats for competitive traction purposes. I'm never going to claim that someone barefoot is going to be able to change direction faster than someone in cleats. That's never anything I would say. So if you need to be playing at a national level, you're going to have to wear cleats, and turf cleats might be the way to go there, especially because a lot of really high level competitive games are now being played on turf. So I would just say wear those for your games and do most of your training and possibly your more recreational level games and possibly even light practices. You could do those barefoot. Now, the awesome thing about training barefoot is that you have less traction. You learn to run with less traction. So that means you're gentler on your accelerations or on your decelerations. That means instead of stopping in 1 or 2 steps because you have all that traction if you're wearing cleats, if you're not wearing cleats, you're going to stop in like 6 steps. Just little steps, more agility, faster footwork. That's all good stuff to be training. And then when you get into the cleats, you're going to feel like you have this huge advantage. If I were to play in cleats, because of the footwork I have built up and the footwork skills I've built up playing barefoot, it would be a massive advantage to put me on the field with cleats. And if I were to play at a higher level, I would put cleats on, and then it would change the game in an advantageous way. So you can do that as well. I found your flick instructional video quite interesting. After 2 years of not playing, I've significantly regressed in the quality of my throws, and I'm struggling to build that base again. All of us are. So many of us have taken a full 2 years off of playing. Just take confidence in the fact that we're all in the same boat, buddy. I'll be giving it a test hopefully and today, and I'll get back to you on that. I did, however, want to inquire that I was recently diagnosed with carpal tunnel syndrome in my right hand, my dominant throwing hand. I'm waiting on x-rays and whatnot to determine the level of severity, but I definitely noticed that my wrist flexion ability seems to be fairly limited, inhibiting the amount of power and spin I can generate on my throw. I'm assuming wrist flexion is this. And I'm assuming that extension would be this. So closing that wrist is going to cause pain and be inhibited. With a possible x-ray and surgery, at least 6 months out, do you have any advice on this front? I saw your 3-finger flick, and I thought that it might be interesting and useful to try for increasing my power and flicks at the minimum. My long story seems to have become a novel. Sorry, cheers, Kieran. So, my thoughts on his carpal tunnel diagnosis in the right hand, dominant throwing hand, twofold. One, if you're getting surgery on that right hand, start now throwing with your left hand. I know I just recently met a guy who was a competitive junior level softball pitcher, and he began to have shoulder issues on his right side. He just spent hours and hours and hours teaching himself to throw left with his fresh, brand new left shoulder. He just set up a target and just repped that thing out, and he could compete with his left hand after that, which gave all kinds of time for his right shoulder to recover. And now he can throw ambidextrously. That's pretty gnarly, especially for a baseball player. You can throw either side and really screw with the batter's minds. In Frisbee, it's the same thing. If you can throw with your right hand, you can also learn to throw with your left hand even faster, because you know the motion in your right hand. In your brain, you can use your mirror neurons to just like turn that over to the opposite mechanic on your left side, the symmetrical mechanics, and just start learning left. Now, that could be the difference between not playing for a full season and getting to play left. Yes, you're going to be at a lower level of performance at first, just in throwing, but you're also eventually going to emerge after your healing process such a powerhouse of a player, such a dangerous handler because of that ambidexterity. Here's an example of where injuries actually make a better, stronger player in the long run than if you were just healthy the whole time and didn't have to change anything about your game. If your right hand stayed fine the whole time and never had any injuries, rather your right wrist, then you would never be forced to build that ambidexterity. If you already have the skills to be competing at a national level, that means you're extremely athletic, and at the national level, they're looking for a combination, a peak nexus of athleticism, strategic awareness, and technique. And if you have the athleticism already, you want to keep that by continuing to play even when you're injured, with your right hand's recovering. You're continuing to play, throwing with your left. Now, technically, if you come out of that injury with this massive skill base on your left side, you're going to be so much more of an attractive player with that ambidexterity and be able to demonstrate some pretty cool skills come tryouts next time you're competing at that high level with a healthy, dominant hand. So I would see that as an opportunity. Bring your expectations down temporarily during that stage where you're building back up. So you think of yourself as a beginner again. You think of yourself as being in your first year of Frisbee. When you're in your first year, you're expected to make mistakes throwing. Just let that be the average for that season, maybe 2 seasons. Don't put a lot of pressure on yourself. Don't have the expectations that you're going to make the throws you threw with your dominant hand. Bring it back to your first year, and I think that'll help you start to develop a relationship to your own identity, I suppose, as a Frisbee player, where you're giving yourself the space and time to learn new skills again in your left hand. I think that pretty much covers the questions that you had in this video. For the rest of you watching, I will link to the relevant blog posts where I do discuss the 3-finger flick and the barefoot throwing. I don't have a blog on ambidexterity yet. I think I should probably put one out there because it's becoming more and more relevant. I mean, you don't have hockey players who only shoot one side. They also, actually, no, that's not even true at all, because a hockey player has a forehand and a backhand. That's the same as Frisbee. But in Frisbee, it's a dynamic sport, and we're seeing at the high levels players who have started to introduce offhand throws. And there's no reason why recreational players can't start to build that now. As an expectation of how long it takes, I would say give yourself 2 years of throwing with your wrong hand before you can really expect high quality out of it. I've been throwing in warm-up with my wrong hand for 6 years now, and it's to the point where I can throw 60 or 70% of the distance with my wrong hand as I can with my dominant hand. And because I can throw so far with my dominant hand, my wrong hand throws are as good as many of the 3 to 5 year players, 3 to 5 year experience level players. That's pretty valuable in a recreational level league. So, Kieran, I just hope the best for you. And the last thing I would say is, when we're injured, we can see these professionals as giving us these almost like, I don't know how to describe this. It's like what they say is the be-all, end-all rules by which the rest of our fate is going to unfold. And take that with a grain of salt, because I have had sciatic pain, back injuries, sprained ankles, the whole gamut of knee pain, patellar tendonitis. Like, at 36 years old, going pretty hard in sports, I've had some pretty wild injuries, and some of these injuries have kept me out of sports for years. The back injury, where I had a bulged disc, my vertebrae crushed down on one of my cartilage discs, and some of the inner juice of that bulged out and pushed into the nerves of my, I guess, sciatic nerves. And that caused pain to the point where I couldn't put on my own socks. Like, I had my wife help me put my socks on every morning. I couldn't play sports. I couldn't jump. And I don't know if anybody else has been watching my videos. Like, I'm a short guy, so in order to be competitive in volleyball and Frisbee and such sports as that, I need to be able to get off the ground and get really high and compete with the tall guys. So a big part of my training is vertical jump training. I wasn't able to jump off the ground. I didn't leave the ground for a year. It was heartbreaking. However, all of these injuries point to opportunities. The reason fundamentally that I have lower back pain is because I have tight hip flexors. Discovering that through pain is a gift in disguise. It's hidden lining, or silver lining rather. And when addressed, you emerge a more resilient and, I suppose, durable athlete, which can accommodate greater capacities of training. When you're training pain-free because you've addressed your weak points, you become able to expose yourself to greater training thresholds pain-free, and that leads to obviously superior adaptations and expressions of muscular growth and all of that good stuff. So see the pain as an opportunity. Listen to what your physiotherapists, chiropractors, doctors, listen to what they're saying, but never let your mind go to the place of it's over for me. It's never over for you. And I'll end on that.